with a convincing loss to the Bills potentially on Thursday. Could that signal the end of the Mike McDaniel era in Miami? We will discuss that in depth, including a great article from The Athletic. Also, what are some of the keys to victory for the Dolphins to pull off a miracle on Thursday night? We will discuss that. What's the key matchup to watch? We will discuss that. Plus, the Dolphins are getting some healthy bodies back.
Dolphin touchdown! And he will score!
Field down the near side, that open, touchdown!
The run from Tua Tagovailoa.
Touchdown!
He's going deep. He's got it for the touchdown again. Touchdown! Tagovailoa trying to make up for it. Fires to the end zone. Touchdown! He throws it. Touchdown, Dolphins!
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan.
Let's go!
Shout out to all of you and all you Fin fans across Fin Nation. And appreciate y'all for coming through for this episode. Man, we keep trucking through as we get ready for what could be an absolute miracle or an absolute disaster. And there's really no in between on Thursday night. So shout out to each and every one of you coming through. You know, I love the Phinside fam. I appreciate all of you in the chat. We haven't done one in a while, so let's go ahead and let's shout out everyone in the chat. Justin, Charles Hilton, Daniel Meehan, Dean Smith, Robert Thomason, Scorpion King 271, Regil, Darth Logan, Jeffrey Ward, Elvidin, Stay Cussed, we'll call him that, Dolphin Don, Omar Ginner, the homie Chef Jude, Daniel Barry Sports Highlights, Octane Genius, DY2 Street King, Kurok 1972. Every time I see your name, I think of Turok. Shout out to John Green, Dolphin Dawn, Kristen Reinhardt. Happy birthday, Kristen. Everyone give Kristen a happy birthday in the chat right now. Snake Eyes, Troy Hicks, Josh Hart, Kevin Brubaker, Costa Nostra, Matthew. Shout out to all of you in the chat. JJ Tucker, Anthony, Samuel Rosa. Appreciate each and every one of you coming through. Happy birthday again to Kristen. Show her some love. Russell, where are you at? Dean Smith, how you doing? So show Kristen some love in the chat. Let's send her a bunch of happy birthdays, as there's already well over 100 of you in the chat. So keep, smash that like button, subscribe if you're new, and wish Kristen a happy birthday. All right. Very easy task. What up, Q? How you doing, sir? It's been a minute, my friend. Hope you're doing well. So shout out to all of you in the chat already coming through. We got a lot to talk about today, as we always do every time we get together. Whether it's good or bad, we always have a lot to talk about. Shout out to George Rodriguez. Glad to spend some of your birthday with you too, Kristen. Hope you have a blessed day, a blessed year, and you get everything your heart desires, not only on this day, but for this whole year. And I really hope it's a Miami Dolphins playoff win, and I really hope you get it. All right. And let's start with a win in Buffalo. I know you probably want that first and foremost. So I saw Travis Wingfield, one of the best in the biz, throw out a stat. And we've talked about this before. We've talked about how healthy the Buffalo Bills offensive line has been the last couple of years. Check this out. This is crazy. The Buffalo starting offensive line has started 164 of a possible 165 games the last two seasons, if you remove the 2024 finale when they rested all five. Only Spencer Brown missed one game last year. What's going on, Aaron? Hope you're doing well. Can you believe that? I mean, what is this luck? I mean, I've said this before. You got to be lucky to be good and good to be lucky. But I wish. Oh my God. If we would have got that in 2023, that season ends differently. I've said this and I continue to say it. That season ends differently. Right? Raheem Mostert didn't have a 100-yard rushing game after Isaiah Wynn goes down. You don't have Isaiah Wynn go down. You don't have Connor Williams go down. And if Teron Armstead can somehow stay healthy, and Austin Jackson, oh my God. In 2023, that run game does not fizzle at the end of the year. And the offense, I don't think, becomes so kind of one-dimensional by the end of it and by the time we show up in Kansas City. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say we would have went on the road and, in one of the coldest games in terms of weather ever in playoff history. I'm not going to sit here and say that. But I think our seeding would have been different. I really do. I know a lot of people, there's people out here with their narratives and they want to excuse the defense in the final 3 or 4 minutes of that Titans game. They just want to stick to how the offense, and what they did in the final 2 minutes. Not that the defense was letting up points left and right. Apparently the offense can prevent points too by playing defense. Maybe you get more first downs if you still had that running game. Right? Shout out to Jeff Fremont. Shout out to Logan Lord. Maybe you get more first downs and therefore you run the clock out and you don't run into that issue. I don't know. We can only speculate, but I will say this. They would have looked a lot better against the Ravens to end that end it out. It just would have been a lot easier of a final stretch. So I wish, the Buffalo Bills, man. I'll tell you, and you want to talk about scary. Just so you guys know, the Miami Dolphins are 3-9 under Mike McDaniel heading into prime time tomorrow night. All right? 2022, they went 1-3 in prime time. All right, they lost to the Bills 32-29, 23-17 loss to the Chargers, 27-15 loss to the Bengals, and a 16-10 win over the Steelers. All right, 2023 they went 1-4 in prime time. Not good, and because you got to include the playoffs there. The playoffs game was primetime. Listen, then they lost 31-17 to the Eagles, 28-27 to the Titans, 21-14 to the Bills, and they beat the Patriots 24-17. The Dolphins in 2023 were 10-3 when it wasn't in primetime. Think about that one for a second. The Dolphins were 10-3 when it wasn't primetime in 2023, but they were 1-4 in primetime. So over the first 2 seasons, you see the 2-7 record. Now, in 2024, they lost to the Bills in primetime and they lost to the Titans. So we're not including the playoffs. I'm taking the playoff game out, right? So if you take the playoff game out, just regular season primetime games, they are 2-8 in primetime up until they faced the Rams, which they beat them. So that made them 3-8. Then they did lose later on in the season to Green Bay. Remember, 30-17. So they're 3-9 in primetime under Mike McDaniel. If you include the playoff game against the Kansas City Chiefs, they're 3-10 in primetime under Mike McDaniel. Even more of a reason for me not to be trying to sit up here and sell you guys hopium on this game. I mean, I know you guys saw me on Teron Armstead's Asset. If you haven't had a chance, go over and check out Teron Armstead's channel. Go subscribe. We're going to do something later on this season. I'm going to have him and Richmond together for sure. I said to Teron when I was up there, I mean, I've now done podcasts with the 2 best left tackles in Dolphins history. Absolutely blessed for that. But 3-9 in prime time. You know, last time we faced them with Weaver's defense, we didn't get a stop for 45 minutes. Tua Tagovailoa puts up the second highest single game EPA per play passing mark against the McDermott defense. But the problem is the defense puts up the 22nd worst EPA per play ever against the Buffalo Bills offense under McDermott. And then you got the special teams, which again, you know, put up. Just the fact of the matter is, the special teams was just as big of a disappointment, right? That special teams was the 7th worst single game performance against Buffalo from an EPA per play standpoint in 123 contests. All of these are over 123 contests over. So think about this. There were 101 worse. There were 101 better EPA per play defensive performances than what we saw in week 9. There were 116 better special teams EPA per play performances we saw in week 9. But Tua put up the second best single game passing play EPA per play total against the Sean McDermott defense. Meaning out of 123 contests, he put up the second best ever. Point being this. Even if Tua shows up, are the other phases going to show up? If the other phases show up, is Tua going to show up? I mean, we saw in Houston last year. Yes, I know Herbert and the Chargers didn't look good against Houston, but Tua didn't look good against Houston either. Is Tua going to show up? I think Tua's going to show up. Right? I'm not worried about this. I think Tua's going to show up. I'm not worried about this at all. I do think Tua is going to show up. I mean, I want you to think about this. Look at Tua on the road in Buffalo under Mike McDaniel. He hasn't been our problem. 2022, everyone told us he couldn't play in the cold weather. He ended up being one of the best players on the field. Right? And we had beat him in Miami earlier that year. 2023, he didn't, he was injured for that game, I'm pretty sure, in Buffalo. And then 2024, last year, week 9, he shows up. The rest of the team don't show up. So, my whole thing is, even if Tua shows up, are the other phases going to show up? And if the other phases show up, is Tua going to show up? I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. All I know is under Mike McDaniel in primetime, it hasn't been pretty. So, that's all I know. We'll see how it works out. I hope they surprise everyone tomorrow. I hope I end up being wrong, but I do not have a great feeling. At all. All right. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you are new. And shout out to the sponsor of today's video. We got some Dolphin bets that are live on the Sleeper app right now. You think you know football? Then try to turn your football knowledge into real money with the Sleeper app, the ultimate fantasy sports app that can turn game day into payday. Just download the Sleeper app and pick more or less on your favorite players. With more stats than any other daily fantasy app, just choose 2 or more of your favorite players from pregame or live. Pick more or less from the predicted stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your money if your picks win. Use promo code Phinside and you get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions do apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states, as well as multiple Canadian provinces. Check out Sleeper today. Shout out to Sleeper for sponsoring the video. All right. See, again, must be why you ride the short bus. What's Tua's numbers in Buffalo? Show me Tua's numbers in Buffalo. Brother, we need a team that knows how to win. Not just a quarterback, we need a team. I like how everyone... See, this is what frustrates me and wonders me, how long have these people been watching the Dolphins for? Guys, how many times have I got to tell you this? This is an organizational issue for not winning. Tannehill couldn't win here. Went to Tennessee, got a run game, got protection. Lo and behold, he won playoff games. Would you look at that? We had arguably the most accurate quarterback of all time, Chad Pennington, come here. Finished top 3 in MVP voting, couldn't win a playoff game. We had Ricky Williams, MVP years, couldn't win a playoff game. We had everything right except Jay Fiedler, couldn't win a playoff game. That's what I'm trying to tell these people. This is deeper than just a quarterback. If you put Herbert here, he's ruined right now. He doesn't get no Pep Hamilton coaching in year 1. He doesn't have a 5,000-yard season to start off his career. You put Joe Burrow here, he ain't taking us to the Super Bowl. With the offensive line and the protection we've had, and he's arguably more fragile than Tua, he's out. Burrow's hurt. Burrow's on the sideline. Jordan Love comes here. Jordan Love don't get no development. Jordan Love don't sit behind no Hall of Fame quarterback like Aaron Rodgers and get proper nurturing and growth. He's ruined because he's thrown to the fire too early. Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts has been slotted into the most complete team in the NFL. And he still can only throw for like 115 yards and struggles to throw 20 touchdowns in a season. You think we're winning with that in Miami? This is what I'm telling people. Sit back and actually evaluate the organization. All these guys would have been ruined. You'd be running any one of these guys out of town. If Justin Herbert blew a 20-plus point lead into the playoffs, you guys would have ran him out of town right there. And his body of work in terms of winning in big moments and big games, you guys would have said the same thing about him as you would have said it about Tua. It's just he would have been 6'5", blonde hair, blue eyes with a stronger arm and a better athlete. This is the reality of the situation that none of y'all seem to want to admit. And I don't know why. But these are also the facts. So let's be real here. Let's keep facts over feelings right now. I've already talked about this, man. I just saw what Mac Jones did under Kyle Shanahan. You know what Tua would do over there under Kyle Shanahan? Please. I already know this. And I talked about this on yesterday's show. I already know how this goes for the Dolphins. Tua's going to go somewhere else to be successful. Mike McDaniel's going to go back to San Francisco. He's going to coach under Shanahan. Then he's going to get another shot in 4 or 5 years. He's going to be successful. And we'll still be going on the merry-go-round. Even though it was probably time to move off of them and we made the right organizational call, we'll still be going on the merry-go-round. Oh, it's what it is. If you have been a fan since the 90s, guys, you want to know how organizational of an issue this is? Put aside the fact Tua was our first Pro Bowl quarterback in 30 years. Put that all to the side. Did we win a Super Bowl with Dan Marino? How many times did we get back after 84? I talked about this, the coaching carousel since Don Shula left. It's organizational at this point, ladies and gentlemen. No single player is going to fix this situation. So, but let's get into this stuff. The main question here is Mike McDaniel. Well, we go to The Athletic and their latest article, which is behind a paywall, but I got it here for you right now. Life came at Mike McDaniel fast, and now his Dolphins might be coming undone. He sprinted off the Gillette Stadium field after a halftime interview, giving a sly look back at the NBC camera in mid-stride. At that moment, his Miami Dolphins, up 14 points on Bill Belichick's New England Patriots, his offbeat swag was undeniable. Mike McDaniel commanded his surroundings as masterfully as Chris Rock during an HBO stand-up special. And everyone who knew anything about football was in on the joke. It was September 2023, and McDaniel in his second season was hotter than a South Florida Bikram yoga studio. The next Sunday at Highmark Stadium, Miami dropped 70 points on the Denver Broncos. Had McDaniel not eschewed a late field goal attempt, the Dolphins could have broken the NFL's single-game regular season scoring record. The quirky, unconventional coach had injected life into a staid and hyper-serious profession. 2 years later, the football-watching world has turned on McDaniel. Now people aren't laughing with him, they're laughing at him. His presence on the visitor sidelines at Highmark Stadium on Thursday night will not be a comfortable one. Coming off a vexing home defeat to the Patriots, the reeling Dolphins are heavy underdogs against the Bills. An embarrassing loss to the 2-0 Bills in the nationally televised standalone game could compel Miami owner Stephen Ross to bring an abrupt end to a once celebrated coaching experiment. Only Ross knows whether things are that dire, but the buzzards, metaphorically, are circling. And so literally in an airplane, before Sunday's game at Hard Rock, fans looked up to see a small aircraft touting a crowdsourced banner, Fire Greer, Fire McDaniel, urging the dismissal of the coach and the general manager who hired him. Life comes at you fast in the NFL, especially when you're an eccentric dude with a distinct fashion sense and an ultra-dry sense of humor. For most of McDaniel's first 2 seasons, a lot of people got the jokes and grooved on the vibe. These days, the laugh lines aren't landing, perhaps even in the Dolphins locker room. All of this, of course, is a direct response to the scoreboard. McDaniel won 20 of his first 33 games, including a narrow playoff defeat in Buffalo at the end of his rookie season. In that game, the Dolphins, reduced to playing their third-string quarterback rookie Skylar Thompson, fought back from a 17-0 deficit and nearly pulled off a massive upset on their final drive. Since then, however, McDaniel has gone 8-14, including a 26-7 road playoff defeat to Kansas City, in which Miami's offense appeared lifeless amid the frigid weather. The Dolphins haven't won a post-forward trajectory. Granted, it's the NFL and things can change in an instant, perhaps even with a shocking upset of the Bills on Thursday Night Football. Yet, unless and until the Dolphins start winning a game again, McDaniel will remain a punchline and a punching bag for a large section of the football world that, even amid the early affection, always saw him as an unnerving outlier. A day after the Dolphins absorbed a season-opening 33-8 thrashing at the hands of Indianapolis Colts, former New York Jets and Bills coach Rex Ryan, whose idea of cool once included a foot fetish video, called McDaniel Nerd Boy during a diatribe on ESPN's Get Up. Maybe he's on a different level, McGenius guy or whatever the hell he is, Nerd Boy, Ryan said. Their team has no respect for the coach. They play like that. They're like, come on, man, get us a dang guy in here. Where's the physicality of this team? They're soft. They have a tons of talent, but they don't play with any passion. It's not just old school coaches like Ryan who are coming from McDaniel. Many of the people who loved him in the beginning, and imagine some of the people reading this fall into that same category, are rolling their eyes at his perceived shtick, authentic as it may be. Remember when McDaniel, after Justin Fields' repeated scrambles, told the then Chicago Bears quarterback to stop it during a 2022 game and everyone laughed? There are people out there that I'd beseech to follow that same two-word advice when it comes to piling on. The larger concern is that some of the people may be lodged inside the Dolphins organization, specifically wearing helmets and shoulder pads on game day. How did we get here? In retrospect, it's not all that surprising given the context of his head coaching hiring. McDaniel followed Brian Flores, whose brusque leadership style alienated many people in the organization and destroyed his franchise quarterback's confidence. McDaniel smartly went the other way, embracing Tua Tagovailoa from the start. He constructed a fast-paced offense designed to maximize the passer's talents and was on board with the franchise decision to sign him to a 4-year, $212.4 million extension in July 2024. While successfully changing the Dolphins' culture and improving the workplace environment, McDaniel, league sources say, was at times overly lenient with star players such as wide receiver Tyreek Hill and cornerback Jalen Ramsey, forgiving poor practice efforts and other behavior perceived by teammates and assistant coaches as selfish. Hill, who told reporters minutes after a season-ending loss to the Jets last January, said, "I'm out, bro. It was great playing here." Eventually walked back the comments and remained on the team. Ramsey was traded to the Steelers in June, with Miami reacquiring Minka Fitzpatrick in the deal. Since the end of last season, according to numerous Dolphin sources, McDaniel has been intentional in his attempt to tighten up the operation. However, it's always easier to go from stricter to more permissive in the locker room than to do the opposite. And the Dolphins' choppy start has created the impression that there's a lack of focus. The Dolphins haven't quit, but their operation has been sloppy. For example, they had 2 chances to mount a game-winning drive in Sunday's fourth quarter, but were undermined by pre-snap penalties. Afterward, McDaniel owned it, saying, "I'm very frustrated with some coaches and players that did not execute communication in a very dire period of the game. With the game on the line, our communication, our substitution was not up to par, and ultimately, I hold all responsibility for all things, so I will make sure that things that should be ironed out already moving forward will not fall victim to the same thing again." Given McDaniel's loyalty to his quarterback, it was somewhat jarring to hear Tagovailoa's take. Quote, "It was frustrating with the communication with the guys inside the huddle and then what the personnel is, then the play. Do we have too many guys in? Why do we have another guy running in? Just the whole operation of that was not up to standard, was not up to par. I got to do a better job with our guys in that sense." As John Lennon once sang, "Nobody loves you when you're down and out." A few victories, of course, would have many singing a different tune. As someone who knew McDaniel long before he became trendy, I'm hopeful they can stay true to his essence, learn from his struggles, and fight the way out of this mess. His rise to the top of the profession is a truly inspirational and underdog story. To his credit, rather than simply trying to emulate a mentor like Kyle Shanahan, McDaniel has been afraid to be himself and buck head coaching stereotypes. In the spring of 2022, shortly after McDaniel parlayed his first and only NFL head coaching interview into his Dolphins gig, we sat together in a Fort Lauderdale restaurant and discussed the challenge that awaited him. More than his well-documented strategic acumen, McDaniel said he looked forward to demonstrating what amounted to his crisis management skills, the ability to navigate octane pressure situation he'd encountered on numerous occasions as one of Shanahan's trusted lieutenants. Oh, that's actually what I'm most excited about, because I think within every game, with every season, there's a point where you're like, oh, fuck. And there's uncertainty and there's stress, he said. And in my opinion, that's when head coaches actually earn their money. So I'm excited for the fact that I know that shit's gonna hit the fan, or there's gonna be pressure, and I think I'm more built to thrive in that. Is he running out of time? Well, it's the NFL, so that's a distinct possibility. McDaniel certainly wouldn't disagree, though he's not as fatalistic as some might perceive him, thanks to his dry delivery and a joke that didn't land. Back in August, when a reporter said good morning to the coach before the start of a news conference, McDaniel replied, "False, great morning." Pressed for an explanation, McDaniel channeled his inner Pink Floyd and answered, "Because we're another day closer to death." Later, McDaniel told NFL Network's Rich Eisen the idea of the statement is to magnify the fact that life is not infinite, and so this day shouldn't be taken for granted. Rest assured, this Thursday night, and however many more Dolphin games McDaniel gets to experience as a coach, most certainly won't be. So, I mean, you know, that's, yeah, I mean, you read between the lines there. I mean, there are implications from Michael Silver that there are players who are out on McDaniel. If you checked out my latest Patreon and my latest 3 Takes update, I've heard there are coaches and players that are out on McDaniel and don't believe on him. So all this is doing, and his implications are just backing up what I've told you guys that I've heard. You know? Now, I've said this, like I said in the 3 Takes, are there players in that room that and coaches that are still in on McDaniel? 110%. But it's clear that there are coaches and players who are out on him. And the real question now becomes is, how many are out of him in positions that make decisions who matter? And I've said this, you know, if there's any doubt from Ross and Garfinkel and Shore and whatever, You got to make the change. You can't let this season get away from you. You have got to turn this around positively for the fan base, for the players in that locker room, and for the coaches that would remain. And personally, a loss on Thursday, especially if it's decisive, especially if it's a convincing loss, you should move on. Because guess what? I don't think they're going to fight out of this. It was one thing when the team was facing adversity in those first 2 years, but we saw the explosiveness, we saw the potential, etc., etc. We are now going on to the second season after Tua got hurt last year, and even when he came back and he had great numbers over those first 6 games, we still found a way to be 500. Now everyone is seeing the flaws, they're seeing the holes in the coaching, in the team, in the vision, etc., etc., etc. So, to me, you can't afford, right? You can't afford that. You just can't afford to stick with this guy if it's evident after Thursday night this is a lost season. Because if we lose convincingly to Buffalo, in Buffalo, that's pretty much going to stamp it that this is a lost season under him and there's no coming back. I mean, what? We want to start like 0-5, 0-6, but then finish out the season, 9-2 and finish 9-8, and you miss the playoffs again, and you don't get a good draft pick? That's a thing too you got to consider. If we lose on Thursday, do you embrace what's happening? Do you give him a chance to revitalize and rejuvenate everyone? So, I don't know. Personally, I would be out of it. And I know people are trying to convince themselves and it's going to be so Dolphins for them to win tomorrow. Guys, I don't think we're winning tomorrow. I really don't. Don't even try to convince yourself. I wouldn't even try to do reverse psychology. I tried to do reverse psychology with the Patriots picking us to lose, hoping that we would win. It's only going to get worse from here on out. So, for all of you Dolphin fans that are heading to the game tomorrow, better pack your ponchos just in case. You're going to have a high of 69, a low of 66. It's going to feel like it's about anywhere from 69 to 67. You're going to have wind gusts of about 8 miles per hour. You're going to have consistent wind that are going to get as high as 8 miles per hour. You're going to have consistent wind that's going to be about 4 miles per hour to the southwest. There is a slight chance of showers, but it's very small. It's only 6%. Cloud coverage is going to be anywhere from 21 to 33%. So, just in case, you never know. If you're a Dolphin fan in Buffalo right now, listen, I'm only a little bit over an hour from the stadium, and even I say screw that. The highlight of that would be going to see, would be going on a wing tour. Let's be real here. The highlight of that trip would be going to eat some wings down there. Bar Bills and 11 and stuff. That would be the highlight of that trip. So, I do think I'm still going to probably come down to the Bengals game in December. So, which sucks because I won't even get to see Burrow. I could get to see a team that's blown up in the Miami Dolphins, and then I get to see Jake Browning for the other side. Lucky me. When you look at the Week 3 injury report, this is what we are looking at. Storm Duck, Ifeatu Melifonwu, Darren Waller, they are all out. Now, Darren Waller was back at practice this week. Look at these limited. Ifiatu Melifonwu and Storm Duck were all did not practice, sorry. Benito Jones is questionable. He's pushing to play. Chop Robinson, he's pushing to play. And Jalen Waddle, he is questionable with a shoulder injury, man. We are going to need him. Ethan Bonner back. Aaron Brewer good to go. Jalen Wright is good to go. On the flip side, though, Matt Milano and Ed Oliver are out for the Buffalo Bills. So, with no Matt Milano and no Ed Oliver, that should be helping us get the run game going. Let's be real here. Jalen Wright back, and that brings a question of who are you going to elevate? Then now we know one of them is going to be Riley Patterson. Okay, we already know they're going to elevate Riley Patterson. Now, who else do you elevate? Do you elevate Greg Dulcich? Are they going to elevate some safety help with Colbert or Sanders? Maybe Hayden Rucci instead of Dulcich? Maybe Theo Weiss? I don't know. Hey, Braden Daniels, I'd be fine with Braden Daniels getting the go and sitting Keon Smith on the bench. But there's options, you know. Greg Dulcich, Hayden Rucci, Braden Daniels, Theo Weiss. I mean, hell, you can elevate McClendon or Bell for some edge help too. And then there's, you know, obviously secondary help with Isaiah Johnson, John Sanders, and Jordan Colbert as well. So it's going to be interesting to see who they elevate. So maybe it's a tight end because they need some tight end help. Now, how do these teams compare heading into this game? It's not good. The Dolphins' offense, their total offense is ranked 23rd. The Bills are ranked 1. Bills are averaging about 450 yards per game. Dolphins are averaging 284.5 yards per game. Passing offense, the Dolphins are 15th. They're averaging about 215. Right now, the Bills are 4th. They're averaging about 284 yards. Rushing offense, the Bills are 2nd. They're averaging 166 yards per game. The Dolphins offense, which is crazy, they are 29th, 69.5 yards per game, which is crazy because the Dolphins are 4th in the NFL in yards, in rush yards per attempt, but they're dead last in actual rush attempts. Scoring offense, the Bills are 2nd. They're averaging 35.5 points per game. Dolphins are averaging 17.5 points per game, which is 26. Sacks allowed, the Dolphins have already allowed 8, which is 30th in the NFL. The Bills have allowed 2, which is 4th in the NFL. Not pretty. Just to put it into further context for you guys right now, too. The Dolphins have already given up 20 pressures in 2 games this season. The Bills, they've given up 23, but they don't let Josh Allen take sacks. They give up mainly hurries, right? Whereas the Dolphins, right, they give up hits as well, quarterback hits as well. You look at third down offense, it's the only top 10 category on this team right now. The Dolphins are converting at a 45% clip. Bills, they're 15th. They're only converting at a 41.4% clip. Total defense, the Dolphins are 26th. The Bills are 7th. Dolphins are allowing 375.5 points per game. Bills are allowing 293. So the Dolphins are only letting up about 75 yards less than what the Bills are gaining right now. While the Bills, as a defense, only allowing about 9 yards more than what the Dolphins are gaining right now. The passing defense for the Bills is number 1 in the NFL. 124 yards per game allowed. The Dolphins, they're 22nd. They're allowing a 236.5. Now, the rushing defense are not good for either team. The Bills are 31st. They're allowing 169 yards per game on the ground. The Dolphins are allowing 139. Scoring defense, the Dolphins are 31st. They're allowing 33 points per game. Bills are 22nd. They're allowing 25 points per game. Sacks, the Dolphins have 4, which is 13th. The Bills, their defense, because Joey Bosa was a beast last game, they have 6, which is 7th best. Third down defense, the Bills, they're number 1 in the NFL. They're only allowing a conversion rate of 27.3%. The Dolphins, they're 30th in the NFL. 30th. That is brutal. Like, that hurts, man. That is tough. I mean, what do you say to that? And remember, the Dolphins last year had the 6th best third down defense. They had the 4th best total defense. They had the 9th best passing defense and the 9th best rushing defense. So look at where they're at right now. They had the 10th best scoring defense. Look where they're at right now. The Dolphins under Weaver continue to struggle to take the ball away. They have 0 so far. The Bills already have 2. Giveaways, the Bills have not turned the ball over yet. The Dolphins have turned the ball over 4 times in 2 games. It's going to be interesting on third down. Dolphins have the 10th best third down offense. Bills have the number 1 third down defense. Oh boy. It's not very encouraging when you see how these two teams line up after 2 games. Let me put it that way. One clearly is 0-2 and the other one's clearly 2-0. Here's my keys to victory on offense. You got to threaten outside the numbers. It was working last week. You know what they're going to do. They're going to try and take away the middle of the field for you again. It was working last week. The corner routes, the deep out routes. It was working last week. You have to continue to threaten outside the numbers. You better be prepared that they're going to push you there. Number 2, you got to get Achane and OG3 involved more with the run game. I mean, we just went over it. You are going against an awful run defense. They're 31st in the NFL. They're somehow worse than you. They're giving up 169 yards a game. It's time to get Achane and OG31 involved. Ollie Gordon, 1 carry for 8 yards last week. Well, let's not let him touch the field again after that. Well, in what world does that make sense? That run game needs to get going. And you just, number 3, you can't afford turnovers and drives that leave points on the field. You can't afford turnovers because you're going to give extra drives to Josh Allen and extra chances to score. You cannot afford that. And then drives that leave points on the field. Getting deep and only settling for 3 is not going to be good enough against this team. Last year, you didn't get a stop defensively for the last 45 minutes. The offense should know that, understand that, and they better be on their P's and Q's because you can't afford to come away leaving points on the field. You got to finish drives off against these great teams, and it starts with the Buffalo Bills. So number 1, Tua, threaten outside the numbers. Let them know. Oh, that's the only way you're going to open up the middle of the field, ladies and gentlemen, is if McDaniel and Tua and Kevin Smith and Darrell Bevell can all get it together and they can threaten outside the numbers. That and running the football is going to open up the middle of the field to you and your bread and butter out of your playbook. So the first 2 go hand in hand. Because if you get Achane and Ollie Gordon involved more in the run game, you only had 15 carries last week. You get them more involved and you can thread outside the numbers, that middle of the field stuff is going to open up. And quite simply, you just cannot afford turnovers, and you got to stop leaving points on the field with drives. So those are my offensive keys to victory for the Miami Dolphins. My defensive keys to victory. You got to find a way to contain Josh Allen. I don't know how you're going to do it. This is why you guys get paid the big bucks. All right, Anthony, I'm looking at you. You better find a way to do it. You're just going to have to find a way to slow this guy down. End of story. Last year in week 9, you didn't do a good job. You know, he's 25 of 39 for 235 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. That's just not good enough. You're going to need to be better this year. Period. You know, you weren't any better last year in week 2 when you got blown out 31-10. So, you know, in that game, you were actually a bit better. You were 13 of 19 for 139 and 1 touchdown. If you know, but I'm talking about defensively, you weren't better. You gave up like 108 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. But you got to hold him to that like 139 yard stat line, 13 of 19 and a touchdown. You got to contain him, and you can't let him beat you with your legs. You got to tap into your 2024 run defense because James Cook, he will feast. Will absolutely feast against this defense if we get what we've seen the last couple weeks. Did you guys see what he just did to the Jets? 21 carries for 132 yards and 2 touchdowns. He killed the Jets on the ground last week. So you got to tap into that number 9, that top 9 run defense from last year. You got to tap into that defense that was top 5 in yards allowed before contact. And then number 3, simple, you can't have a repeat of week 9 last year. You can't afford not getting a stop in the final minutes. And I put this in here because we saw what happened in week 1 when you allowed the Colts to score on every possession, all 7 possessions. And then if it wasn't for a kneel at the end of the first half last week, the Patriots would have scored on every possession in the first half last week as well. So I've seen this. So you just can't afford that. The way this team is playing, the state this team is in right now, you cannot afford to get into a shootout with the Buffalo Bills because you're not going to win. You might get blown out that way. So you got to find a way to contain Josh Allen. You got to keep your gap integrity and tap into your 2024 run defense because James Cook, coming off that Jets game, he's ready to feast off this run defense we've seen the last 2 weeks in Miami. And quite frankly, you can't have what you did against the Colts, and you can't have what you did in week 9 against the Bills last year. You've got to get defensive stops. You've got to get off the field. You've got to give the offense a chance to take the lead. Because that's another way we're going to be successful. And it kind of leads into my key matchup here. We're only going to be successful here if we're playing with a lead. Or we're playing within 1 score. And why do I say that? Because my matchup to watch is Tua and McDaniel versus Allen and McDermott. Tua versus Allen. Is Tua once again going to post one of the better EPA per play performances from a passing standpoint like we saw in week 9 last year? Because if he does that, we got a chance. If we see the Tua we saw in week 9 last year, if we see the Tua we saw on the road in 2022 in the cold in Buffalo, we offensively got a chance. But on the flip side, if McDaniel gets outcoached in big moments by McDermott, Tua and anything he can do will be for naught. Because Tua can have a big game. Tyreek can have a big game. Waddle can have a big game. The defense can be good. But if we have substitution issues, operational issues, procedural issues, like we saw in key moments on the last 2 drives offensively last week for the Dolphins, then it's going to be all for naught. And they're going to lose in the final few minutes. And they're going to lose by a field goal again like they did last year. I was going to do McDaniel versus Dermott, but I added Tua and Allen in there because I didn't want to do... I did McDaniel versus Vrabel last week. So that's my matchup to watch heading into this game. That's my matchup to watch. Now, score prediction. I don't think it's going to be good, ladies and gentlemen. I think we're going to lose 34-17. It's kind of right around their averages right now with, like, in terms of what we're scoring and what they're scoring offensively. You know, we're scoring about 17.5 points per game right now. They're scoring about 35.5 points per game right now. 34-17 Buffalo. That's how I see it going. I think it's going to be more like that 30-10 game we saw in week 2 last year, more so than what we saw in week 9 where it was 30-27. And I hope I'm wrong. Football gods, if you hear me, let me be dead wrong. Let the Dolphins win in Miami if you're listening. But I don't think I'm going to be. So, again, I hope I'm wrong. I just don't think I'm going to be. And I will gladly come up here on Friday and gloat about being wrong if I am. I pray I am, bro. I pray I am. But I just don't think I will be. I was right last week when I said we'd lose to the Patriots. So, hopefully I'm wrong this week. And I agree with what Chuck says. With this defense, you need to start with the lead. And the need to start the lead, he would defer if we win the coin flip. He wouldn't defer. McDaniel always defers. McDaniel always defers. But I agree, you got to set the tone. At some point, you got to set a tone. I agree with you 110%. Weaver's clearly a better play caller and coaches better with a lead. McDaniel offensively, he's much better with a lead than he is trailing by more than a score. Because, you know, McDaniel's still okay. You don't see the warts pop up when we're only within a score. But when we're in when it's multiple scores, it's pretty much over. I mean, because Chuck makes a good point. You're going to defer the ball if you win the coin toss, and you're going to let Buffalo set the tone in Highmark Stadium, which is already going to be rocking on a Thursday night. You're setting it up for it to be an absolute nightmare on the first drive and the most scripted drive of the game, just from a noise standpoint, which we've already seen them have communication issues. We don't need fan noise adding to that because it could be a disaster, all right? Smash that like button. Subscribe if you are new. We're going to be live tomorrow night. I'm going to do a live reaction to the game. We're going to do a post game. So we got a lot of content covering your way. And then, however tomorrow night goes, it's going to be very interesting. Tomorrow is going to be a very interesting night for the Miami Dolphins and fans. So make sure to keep it locked in. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you are new. As always, you already know what time it is. Fins up all day, every day. And shout out to Sleeper for sponsoring the video. I'll see y'all tomorrow night. Let's get this W, even though I think we'll lose.